Chapter 11. James. I'd been happy to be the vehicle for Connor to vent out his anger and frustration. The louder he shouted at the invisible threat, the more I saw of my old friend. This was the Connor I'd known and missed. The Connor that didn't take any crap from anyone, and who stood up for himself on and off the pitch. Whatever happened with him had knocked his confidence. Maybe it was the shitstorm with his ex-girlfriend, or maybe his job was a bigger problem than he had let on. But I was glad to finally see some fight in him. "And I'm going to go back to work tomorrow," he said, as his final and non-negotiable parting words. I bit the inside of my cheek to stop from smiling, even though it was another part of my anatomy that had woken up with Connor's rant. "Sorry to break it to you, but you're not going to work tomorrow," I said. His green eyes were as stormy as I'd ever seen them, so before he had a chance to come at me, I clarified, "Tomorrow is Saturday." He let out a long breath and sat on the bed. I sat next to him and said, "I don't know grown-up Connor all that well, but teenager Connor wouldn't be seen dead at school on a Saturday. Well, not unless there was football practice, that is." "You're right," he said. "Teenage James was more likely to forget it was Saturday and turn up at school anyway." I poked him in the ribs. "That was only once, and fuck you. I loved school." He used my move to grab my arm and put me in a headlock. "You just wanted to hang out with me because I was so cool," he said. I tried to get out of the headlock, but Connor was stronger than I'd expected, so I had to employ a different tactic. While he was distracted trying to ruffle my short hair, I grabbed him by the waist and pinned him down with my legs. "I think you were the one who wanted to hang out with me. Let's face it, your IQ went up by a few points just by sitting next to me." I knew he knew I didn't mean anything by it. All the time we'd spent studying together, he'd always proven that while he would have preferred to be playing football, he was actually really smart. "I had a reputation to uphold," he said. "Oh yeah, hotshot? And what was that?" I said, at the same time as Connor raised his hips. A move that distracted me long enough that he was able to overturn us, so I was the one who ended up with my back on the bed. I closed my eyes, wishing desperately that he wouldn't move, because if he did, there was no way he wouldn't feel how hard I was. When Connor's phone rang and he got off me to pick it up, I turned on my belly and said a little prayer of thanks to whomever had interrupted us. "Oh, hey man," Connor said to the person on the other side of the line. I got up to go to the bathroom attached to my bedroom, only paying a little bit of attention to the phone call. It sounded like he was talking about football, so it was nothing for me to worry about. What had me more worried was that I was still painfully hard, and there was no doubt what I'd be doing as soon as I closed the door behind me. It was unprofessional, and all kinds of wrong, but my body hadn't gotten the memo that it wasn't okay to be attracted to a straight man, or an old friend, for that matter. I didn't bother undressing because I knew it wouldn't take long to bring myself to climax with only a few strokes of my cock. When was the last time I'd been so hard for someone? The answer was never. I looked down at the small, wet patch on my boxer shorts and nearly came at the sight of it. My cock was so hard it was raising the elastic waistband of my underwear. I pressed my hand over it and squeezed, imagining Connor's tentative touch doing the same. In my head, I wasn't touching myself. Connor was there, on his knees, one hand running up and down my back, before settling on the globes of my ass while the other teased my erection. "Fuck yes," I hissed. As I finally wrapped my fist around my length, and then teased the head with my thumb, spreading my pre-cum in that sensitive area, it wasn't my hand anymore. It was Connor's. And then it wasn't his hand, it was his mouth. As soon as I imagined the heat from his mouth, and the look of pure lust in his green eyes as he took me in. I couldn't control it any longer. I came so hard that some of it hit the bathroom mirror above the sink. My slacks were pulled by my feet, so I stepped out of them, but my boxer shorts didn't even make it past my ass. For someone who kept a strict fitness regime, I was struggling to get my breathing back to normal. I cleaned my hands and wiped the mirror before I sat down on the floor with my back to the sink cabinet. I was in serious trouble. And not just because being attracted to someone I was trying to protect was wrong on every level, but because this was Connor. And Connor would always be more than just a friend to me. That meant my heart was at stake, and I needed to tread these waters very carefully, because I couldn't go through the pain of losing Connor again. Maybe I should get back to work, and focus on finding any clues to the identity of the person or persons that broke into Connor's house. That way I could go back to my real job. With my eyes fixed on the floor in front of me, I didn't see my attacker until she'd stuck her beak into the fleshy part of my hand between my little finger and my wrist. "Fuck! Shit!" I cried, as I tried to hold her with my other hand so she'd release me. The bathroom door slammed open, and it was like one of those moments that happen in slow motion in movies. Bubbles was latched onto my hand. Connor's eyes fixed onto Bubbles, and I looked from her to him, wondering when she'd let go and waiting for the moment he'd realize I was sitting on my bathroom floor with my underwear halfway down my ass. Oh, fuck, I was never gonna live this down. "Bubbles, what the hell?" Connor said, kneeling next to me. "I'm so sorry, James. I didn't think she'd escape again." "That's okay, just help me get my hand back." "Come on now, Bubbles," Connor said gently. "Let's leave Uncle James alone again so he can carry on doing what he was doing before you barged in." I wasn't... My face felt hot as I tried hopelessly to cover my crotch with my shirt. I didn't think it was possible to get any more embarrassed, but when my dick perked up again because Connor had his hands on mine, soothing the skin that Bubbles had nearly punctured, I nearly died on the spot. Especially because Connor picked that moment to look down at where there was still some leftover cum from my solo session, now mixed with a new wet spot. "I'm so sorry. I'll leave you. We'll just, go," he said, avoiding eye contact, for which I was grateful. I closed the door behind Connor and jumped in the shower, hoping to wash off my stupidity and my embarrassment alongside the remains of what I'd done. When I came out, I hoped to apologize to Connor, but I couldn't see him anywhere. A note on the kitchen table put my mind at ease. He was next door with Charlie. There was only one thing I could do while I waited for Connor to come back, and that was to have words with Princess Bubbles, because I sure as shit couldn't face Connor and Charlie right now. "Okay, Miss Bubbles, me and you need to talk." My statement was largely ignored by the tiny troublemaker who was swimming in the deeper part of the tank. "How do you even get out of there?" I looked for any part of the tank that had lower walls she could climb over, but even her rocky beach under the UV light was in the middle of the tank to mitigate potential escape attempts. "You know that tracking device I put in Chris and Charlie's watches? I'm going to put a tiny one on you, too." Since I was still being ignored, I carried on talking. After being caught with my trousers down at my ankles, would it be any worse talking to a turtle? I didn't think so. "Now, I know you're still a baby girl, so you need to trust me on this rule, okay? It'll serve you well for the future. Stay away from human bathrooms, unless you want to be witness to things that your innocent turtle eyes shouldn't see. And bedrooms, for that matter. And kitchens. Come to think of it, just stick to your tank from now on, and it'll be better for all of us, okay? I said. How about hallways? Connor said, leaning against the doorframe. Fuck me.